Now, if you're in the financial sector, you've probably been glued to the live stream of proceedings from the Royal Commission. Many who aren't in the financial sector probably have been too. And for some, the evidence has been so shocking, they've decided now is the time to jump ship from the big banks and go independent, according to one group that represents independent advisors. At the same time, the political blame game goes on over who did or did not want the Royal Commission in the first place. Jonathan Hare reports.
The Independent Financial Advisors Association of Australia believes the Banking Royal Commission has tarnished the reputation of most who work in the sector, even those who've done nothing wrong. Daniel Bramall is the IFAA's president.
The advisors that we're talking to are really wondering whether there's any prospect of staying. It's more scary to stay now than it has ever been.
He says some financial advisors who work for the big banks are planning to jump ship as soon as possible, and the industry is bracing for that.
We feel that this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and we're experiencing a larger volume of inquiries from advisors confidentially in aligned channels, seeking out their other options, and so we're establishing a program to be able to help walk them through their options so that they can make a wise choice and make the transition to independence.
And that's because they want to walk away from the big banks.
Well, what we're hearing is that they're saying that if they're ever going to do this, then now's the time to do it. Will the banks actually ever change? Because they've had a raft of rules be introduced and they still seem to be trying to circumnavigate the rules rather than uphold them.
Commonwealth Bank whistleblower Jeff Morris says he hasn't been surprised by the evidence.
Well, I'm not shocked at all, actually. It's exactly what I expected to come out. I mean, this is why I spent 5 years fighting to get this Royal Commission, because I knew how bad things were, how unbelievably bad things were.
Meanwhile, as the Royal Commission hears more shocking admissions every day, the blame game has begun over who didn't want it to take place. Former Deputy Leader Barnaby Joyce tweeted a mea culpa.
In the past, I argued against a Royal Commission into banking. I was wrong. What I've heard so far is beyond disturbing.
His replacement, Nationals leader Michael McCormack, was asked about it at the National Press Club.
Are you glad that you had rebel MPs within your midst, within your party, who basically held the feet of the government to the fire until the Royal Commission was called?
The answer is a simple yes, and I know how much Senator John Wacker-Williams and his senatorial colleague Barry O'Sullivan and others besides, how much they fought for a Royal Commission into banks.
Shadow Minister for Finance Jim Chalmers says it's the government's fault the Commission wasn't called earlier.
They resisted a Royal Commission, they resisted our reforms which separated financial advice from the selling of financial products, all of these important measures. So I think we can very easily dispatch with the recent claims from Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull. They never believed in a Royal Commission.
But Treasurer Scott Morrison rejects that.
As a government, no, we did not rush into this. We did not enter into this lightly. For us, it wasn't a political game as it was for the Labor Party. We took this very seriously when we finally took the decision that we did.
There's also concern about the Royal Commission's tight schedule. It's currently due to submit a final report in February next year. But some, including the Finance Sector Union, argue that more time is needed. According to Scott Morrison, all the Commissioner needs to do is ask.
If Commissioner Hayne were to come forward at some future point and make a recommendation about what he needs or the resources he needs or the time he needs, then of course the government would listen very carefully to the Commissioner.
A view backed up by Finance Minister Matthias Cormann on 2GB.
If the Royal Commissioner were to come to the government and say, I need more time, I think you can safely assume that the government would accept that request.
Finance Minister Matthias Cormann speaking on 2GB. Jonathan Hare, our reporter.